As we celebrate Women's History Month within BU Athletics, it's my pleasure to welcome you to a wonderful event that celebrates our past by recognizing incredible pioneers whose efforts to compete nearly 50 years ago still have a resounding effect today, not only on BU women's rowing, but on all of BU athletics. Today, we'll hear about the women that started the BU women's rowing program despite challenges, obstacles, and biases against women in sport. We're pleased to have Jane Muskie, CFA class of 76, and her former women's rower here to share the documentary 9, which she directed, that chronicles the efforts of these inspiring and incredible women. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Dr. Harvey Young, Dean of Boston University's College of Fine Arts. Dr. Young is an accomplished researcher, author, and faculty member who is in demand for his expertise and commentary on popular culture. Harvey.
Thank you, Drew, and welcome everyone. It's a real honor to be here for this conversation. In the words of BU Hall of Famer Gene Friedman, the BU alum they featured in 9 did not set out to create a legacy. However, as you will see, they did. These amazing, remarkable, inspiring women confronted gender bias and sexism. These serious athletes and fierce competitors built a program not in pursuit of awards, which they certainly won, but to create opportunities for smart, talented, determined young women to, as Friedman says, to push themselves physically and mentally for the pure joy of pushing themselves both physically and mentally. After watching today's documentary, we will have a discussion with alumna and 9 producer and director Jane Muskie, as well as Boston University's director of rowing, Madeline Davis-Tully, and 2 current student athletes. We will talk about the film. We'll talk about the profound impact women in 9 have had on them, these women assembled here today, and also the sport of rowing at BU. So please join me now as we watch 9.
So we're going to do the guys progression starting with top half. We're just going to do third and fifth out, so keep things moving here. All right, go 6, go start up with the cut, top half. Right to the water, heel, left thrust, right to the 5 strokes pausing at half slide. 10 strokes continuous, and then going to the 6.
On behalf of the Boston University Hall of Fame, it is my honor to present the induction from the class of 1975, a champion of equal rights for female athletes and a true pioneer in rowing, Gene Friedman.
I don't think we consciously set out to create a legacy. We set out to be serious athletes, to push ourselves physically and mentally for the pure joy of pushing ourselves physically and mentally.
It was just a small group, and it meant meeting with the men's coach and saying 60 women showed up at a meeting and expressed an interest in rowing, so we'd like to start a program. The excuses that came were astounding. The boats are too heavy. You'll never be able to carry them out of the boathouse. You'll get blisters on your hands. There's no time in the day. And at every turn, our response was, we're in. We will do it. Just give us the opportunity.
I had never played a team sport before rowing. I was a transfer, I didn't know anybody, and I thought, these are my people.
Saw a poster hanging that announced an exploratory meeting to investigate women's rowing.
I went to the meeting and I saw an 8 rowing on the lake, and I went, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
I got a call at work from Hugh Foley, who was the varsity coach for the men and had been my coach, and asked if I would help him get rid of these 600 women that wanted to row.
You know, we were not really welcome initially.
And we were rowing at 5:30 in the morning because we weren't allowed in the boathouse in the afternoons when the guys were there.
And he figured that would get rid of 95% of them, and it didn't, so.
Many of us were avid feminists and could not wait for a fight. And we're walking over the BU bridge, and everybody is just fit to be tied over, this conflict that we're about to have with the provost.
Yeah, he would let us use the only 4 in the boathouse that no one had used in 5 years. Once in a while, he'd let us use these broken down pairs that had been in collisions with bridges and other boats.
That was actually our first race, and we were rowing in that heavy boat with the mismatched riggers and mismatched oars. We were terrific, and we actually won that race, I think by 10 seconds. It was so powerful. So that was what
We had gone to the national championships and won at the national championships. Then we had gone to the Canadian Henley and won there. We were on top of the world. It was a very, very exciting time in terms of discovering your own potential as an athlete.
What you all did here as undergraduates, most of your peers are either unwilling or unable to do that, and that makes you special. You're in the rowing fraternity. It doesn't matter if I'm 50 years old and you're 2 years old, you're an oarswoman or an oarsman, you're special.
There are different kinds of winning. There's winning on the water, which we're always trying to do, but then there's the wins of helping a young woman recognize in herself a power and an autonomy that she may not have known that she had, that she's capable of things personally, athletically, that maybe she didn't realize. And if I can have some role in that, that's a win for me too.
I guess I did see that we were clearing the path for those women that came after us.
Rowing and women's sports in general have gained a higher status within athletic departments and within culture as a whole. There's 90 Division I programs. There's a lot of women's rowing.
Well, it's the strongest group of women I'll ever know on many levels, because you have to be able to endure unbearable pain and know that everybody behind you and in front of you is counting on you.
It changed my life forever, probably saved my life. These are the most precious friendships I have.
What I learned is that I'm very strong for a 5'4" woman, and I didn't know that previously.
What I learned and what I carried with me was what I learned in my team. It was the power of the team, the depth of the friendships and the knowledge of one another, and the fact that if we worked hard enough, we really could get there. This is possible.
I learned to be persistent. I learned to compromise. I learned a lot about humility. I learned also that if something didn't seem right, I was going to step up. And you know what I loved about rowing at the time? Because you were walk-ons and you were made into athletes. You were molded into athletes, and I was fascinated by that.
Highlight of my life. I've had a lot of good fortune, and rowing is right up there.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins. A moment to feel alive. This is where it all begins. A moment to feel alive. This is where it all begins. A moment this good to you.
In addition to her work with Nine, Jane is an accomplished film and television professional with scores of credits as a production designer to her name, including numerous films that we've seen many, like, scores and dozens of times. When Harry Met Sally, Hitch, Made in Manhattan, and more, like 50, 60 more credits more. Welcome, Jane. We're also joined by Madeline Davis Tully. Madeline is in her 4th year as the director of women's rowing at Boston University. In this role, she oversees 2 rowing programs, open weight and lightweight, that today consist of more than 85 women. During her tenure, she has led the open weight program to top 3 finishes in the Patriot League in each of her seasons. Prior to BU, Madeline was an assistant coach at both Ohio State and Stanford. While at Ohio State, she helped that program capture 2 national championships and multiple conference championships. An accomplished rower herself, Madeline was an All-American at Princeton and also competed for the US national team. We are also joined by Christina LaMagna, who's a senior from Fanwood, New Jersey, and a coxswain within the program. She is enrolled in the College of Communication. Off the water, Christina has earned numerous academic accolades as a member of the Patriot League Honor Roll and has also received BU's prestigious Scarlet Key Award, which honors service and leadership within the BU community. And last but not least, we are joined by Megan Masterilli, who's a junior captain from Portland, Oregon, and is enrolled in the College of Arts and Sciences. Megan has been a member of the Varsity 8 boat, helping the program to strong performances at the Patriot League Championships, the Council Cup, and the Foot of the Charles. Off the water, she has earned academic accolades as a member of the Patriot League Honor Roll and has also been recognized by the Collegiate Rowing Coaches Association for an academic achievement. It's an extraordinary lineup of panelists today. Welcome, everyone. I want to begin by asking Jane the first question. Can you talk about how this film came to be and why was it important to tell this story?
Thank you, Harvey. All the women that are the alums from the 70s that are in this film, we've all stayed best friends for all these years. And every year when we get together for a reunion, or for many, many years up until maybe 2 years ago, we rode the Head of the Charles every year. I just kept watching these ladies thinking someone has to tell this story. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And I work in the film business. So eventually this year, I had a break. This is pre-COVID, but I just had the time to finally put it together thinking I could do this, so I put together a small crew, and the ladies were very freaked out when I said, hey guys, guess what we're going to be doing? And then they got on board and they said, you're right, we have to tell this story. So from there, we made plans to get together up at BU. Maddie helped us arrange everything, and Drew. And we really got it together to film over a 4-day period. And then I went into editing with Robert Morrison, who produced it with me, who actually is the son of one of the rowers from the 70s, Betsy Cooper. So it was really a great, having him also I remember him as a baby on the dock. So it was really a wonderful experience for all of us.
And how do you feel about having the opportunity to share this story with others?
Well, I think it's very important. And that was the other impetus to get me going, was every year coming to BU and seeing these young rowers, and I rowed in a master's program for a while and also saw a lot of young rowers at the boathouse there. I thought these women have no idea of what went on, and I'm a firm feminist and believe in Title IX. And, up until very recently, Title IX was being talked about as something that maybe we don't need anymore. So that was a little bit of desperation on my part too, to get it together.
Well, I think it was an extraordinary film, and obviously we just screened it, and it's there's so much that is done in such a compact film in terms of sort of telling the history of women's rowing at BU. I personally found myself inspired, by your classmates and the women who you featured, and just sort of encountering and seeing how they overcame and faced these adversities, where it's like there's just obstacles and challenges being thrown their way, from not having access to the boathouse to receiving substandard equipment, and yet they were like, we're not going to let this slow us down. And the fact that you shared this story, I think, is a real gift. So thank you very much for that. My next question is, I'm going to offer it to Madeline, but I'm going to open it up beyond that. What was your experience encountering this history of women's rowing as relayed through Nine?
Yeah, it was really an incredible story to learn about. I had gotten the opportunity to meet Jane and many of her teammates my first fall here at BU. They were here to race at the head of the Charles in their alumni boat, and I got to meet up with them and spend some time with them at the boathouse and outside at dinner and a drink. And it was immediately, I was struck by how warm and welcoming they were. To me personally, and how bound together they were by the journey that they had been on. And even time has passed since then, and that bond is just, you can feel it immediately among the women in that group, and what they've been through to allow the program to exist in the way that it does now. And just getting the chance to sit around and hear their stories was incredible in and of itself. And then when Jane told me that she was going to be making this documentary, I was thrilled, and I wanted to do everything we could to help make it happen, because I think she's exactly right. It's such an important story for the women on this team, the alumni that have come between then and now, and rowers, men and women beyond just BU. I mean, this is a part of collegiate athletics history, not just women's rowing history at BU. And fortunately, you know, the young women that are rowing now have come of age in the sports world, where by and large, the obstacles don't exist the way that they did during this time. And I think it's so important that we recognize the efforts of the women, that they had to, you know, what they had to do to allow us to exist in this world now, to allow us to walk into DeWolf Boathouse and have everything that the guys have, you know, to have the best equipment that we can, to expand the locker room so we can fit both the open and the lightweight teams in there, and to live in a world where, you know, through their efforts and those of others at the university and Title IX, we are able to exist like this. And I think it's so important that the women now recognize that we are so indebted to our sisters that came before us, and that we have a real responsibility to live up to the tradition that they created.
I would same question to Megan and Christina. As current members of women's rowing at BU, what does the legacy and the achievements of these alumni mean to you?
I'll go for it. It means a tremendous amount, and as it's been said previously, I'm really glad they made this film, because I had no idea exactly what history there was that I was benefiting from. I've been grateful for the opportunities I've been given since I arrived, but I was never quite sure where they came from, where the privileges I was getting came from. And so it's really, when you don't know that and it's not shown to you like it has been now, it's easy to forget about that and just kind of continue living with the privileges you do. And so having been shown this documentary, it gives me goosebumps every time watching it. I really love it. I don't know, I'm just extremely grateful for what they did and what they faced, but I'm also very empowered by it. I think, you know, we have come a long way for women in sports, but there's still areas in the world where, you know, there's gender inequalities. I study STEM, and so just seeing the way these women persisted and the strength to overcome and face people who didn't believe they could, it's very empowering. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with everything that Megan has said. I think the value of seeing this documentary and what these women went through is legitimately and quite literally everything. The program would not exist at all without their efforts. And as someone who walked onto the team, to watch them as the original walk-ons, kind of take and create and mold and form this program to what it is today is incredibly empowering, and it absolutely has inspired me to continue to push the uphill battle that it is, to improve yourself and work together as a team. So I thank Jane and all of her classmates for all of those efforts that they've done to get us and give us these opportunities that we do take for granted every day. So thank you.
So Jane, you were an athlete at the very beginning, right, of Title IX, and you've seen over the decades women's sports and the opportunities evolve. So just reflecting on that evolution, what have you seen over the years from when you were a student to the types of opportunities that are available for women athletes, and how has that evolution resonated with you? Like, so what are your thoughts? What needs to be done?
Oh, I'm sorry. There's something going on here with my Wi-Fi. I'm so sorry. I'm going to keep talking. My Wi-Fi just hit out at this office. I think that the biggest.
Well, Jane, why don't you hold it?
Oh, okay.
Hey, you're back on camera. Great, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so go for it.
Now, you're editing anyway, so we're good.
We are, yes.
Hey, I think believe it or not, the biggest change, it sounds crazy, but the men back then were so full of anger and animosity. And I think over the years, all we women coming back for the head, or, being around campus just for other events, more at the boathouse, we've all been very kind of tickled by the fact that the men and the women coexist so nicely now, because in the beginning, it was real anger on their part, having us in the boathouse daily. I mean, we had orange crates for lockers. We weren't allowed to shower. It just went on and on every day. And it was like that for about the first 2 years. And they just did not want us there. And I think that that's a real plus now, that has gone away and everyone's embraced each other as equal, as friends. And I think also the amount of equipment for sure is so different over the years. And I'm talking just because we have this history of coming every year for the head, I can tell you that it's amazing what's happened now with equal equipment, hopefully equal, and time on the water, coaches that get along. Our coaches back then, the men's coach did not like the women's coaches. So it's all very refreshing. And I also feel the spirit of the women is still akin to our spirit, and they're still so full of wanting to be 100% of who they can be, and now they really get more of a chance to do that than we did.
And I want to ask a follow-up. In thinking about the many women who were profiled in 9, is there a particular comment or a story that resonates with you?
I think that all of us comment that one of the rowers might have made in the film, or just a comment from me. I think that the resonance is that when we went out to shoot this and we were all rowing together, first of all, that's always a wonderful feeling. We're back in the boat. In the boat, we've always been able to set up the boat pretty well, which is always very refreshing. But I think that when they come and see these young ladies rowing, that's the thrill, because it means that all of that went on in the beginning. And it's funny because you can hear Jeannie and Sharon talking about, well, we never meant to, we just wanted to row. We never meant this to be like, oh, we're, going to march out and, grab. We were all athletic before we got to BU. There was just no place to put us. So we created our own place, and there were other teams at the same time. I think sailing and tennis and basketball were all these women that were really sort of like, whoa. And I think the irony is that a lot of us had come from better high school female athletic programs. So when we got to BU, we're like, what is going on? And it wasn't just BU. Like Madeline was saying, it was all across the country. I remember Dartmouth was going through it. it was a university-wide situation and a perfect storm with Title IX literally being enacted within a year of all this starting.
And you were not interviewed in the documentary.
No, I was the interviewee, and
Yes.
there was a very important reason for that. I knew how to push their buttons. And
well, so as the interviewer, my question for you is, how did you first get connected with women's rowing? What connected you to what occurred in this film?
We all did the same thing. We all came with some sort of sports background from our high schools. I'd always been a competitive swimmer. You know, it was sort of like showing up, and then and we talk about it in the documentary a few times. There were these signs all over the student union, you know, women's rowing, kickoff, whatever. And I remember thinking, boy, I've never rowed, you know. And I think I was just thrilled, like all of us, to see there was actually a sign up saying that this was a possibility, that this may happen. They may form a team. And I think we all kind of came from different parts of the campus, different schools, because everyone had seen these same flyers stuck up. And we showed up at the boathouse, and you know, we talk about that in the film, and they were just overwhelmed with the amount of women that showed up, and it just sort of was exciting. We were like, whoa, let's go, you know.
And I'm curious to hear the stories of both Megan and Christina. How did you sort of begin this journey to sort of world-class Division I rowing at BU? So Megan, you can lead off, I guess.
Yeah, I'll go for it again. For me, I come from a lot of privilege in terms of how I got into rowing. My mom rowed herself in college, and so growing up, I gave rowing a try when I was in high school because it was a good way to stay fit. And I really decided I wanted to row in college because I love to push physically and mentally. And so I really love that quote in the documentary where she said, you know, we did it because we wanted to challenge ourselves physically and mentally. I really identified with that because that's a large part of why I decided to continue competing in rowing at a Division I level, because rowing definitely provides that challenge. But at the same time, the community rowing brings, both when I was in high school and now, it's very unique from other sports, I think, because it's like a family, but you're bonded over kind of shared, not misery, pain for doing hard things. And so it's really special that it does that. So that's why I've continued to do it. Yeah.
So I, as I mentioned before, walked onto the team. I was not recruited. I did not row in high school. I did not cox in high school. My freshman year at BU, I had met someone who was recruited, and I had kind of said, I know that coxswains are a thing that exists. They're small people who don't row, and they're kind of the leaders of the boat, the liaison between the coaches and the rowers, and running practice in terms of calling races and things like that. And so I had tried out my sophomore year and made it onto the team, and it's been a very big learning curve since then. But I think part of it is of it being a D1 sport and the opportunity to compete and learn at this level, to be molded into the ideal coxswain for BU women's rowing is very exciting. And I really do think that it's changed me as a human being, as a person. And I just love that the performance aspect of it, the pressure and feeling it pay off, and just like bonding with the girls in your boat. It's such a strange collective experience that you can't experience in any other aspect of life, I think. So that's what has kept me here.
And just to follow up, this is again for you, Christina and Megan. how do you connect and link your experiences here with BU with the experiences that we got access to through 9? Megan?
Yeah, I think okay, I kind of talked about this a little before. In the documentary, they talk about the struggles they endured together and how that tied them together as friends for life. And I'm barely in my 20s, so I hopefully still have a lot of life ahead. But I imagine that the experiences I have with my teammates now will create these lifelong friendships. Hopefully that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the way that we're all connected in this moment as rowers through the pain, the challenge of the intensity of the moments that we experience together, I think we're connected to those of Jane's class and those who came before us in that way that there's a mutual understanding that we have experienced that very unique feeling. So I think there's a similar mindset, there's a similar connection in just having a shared experience. And then it's deepened by the fact that we know that we would not have this incredibly unique experience without their efforts as well.
And my next question is for Madeline. So you were an All-American. You competed as a member of the U.S. national team. You've coached, NCAA champions. What are some of the more important lessons you've learned in your experience as an athlete? And then later on, we'll talk about your experience as a coach, but I want to get a sense of some of your experiences as an athlete.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the most important things I've learned through being a rower and being an athlete is that strength can be learned and confidence can be learned. And I think, oftentimes, and particularly as women, we're sort of just told, you're strong, be confident, right? And that alone isn't enough to make you confident or make you strong, right? Those things have to be learned and taught through action. And I think what I learned through rowing, and I think more than anything, it was what I learned through just dedicating myself at a very, to a very high degree for a long time, is that that process that is oftentimes monotonous and shared misery, as we've already said. And in our sport, it's not often, if ever, glamorous. There's not a lot of people watching. There's not a lot of cameras around, except for when Jane's there. It's not something that you necessarily get that big sort of public payoff. And so much of what is learned and earned by doing it is internal. And, for me, I was not an athlete before I started rowing. I played a lot of sports. I was on a lot of teams, but I wouldn't say I was ever very athletic. And like Jane said, we're a bunch of athletes with nowhere to go. Like, I was somebody who wanted to be an athlete with nowhere to go. And rowing was sort of my final shot when I got to high school. And the thing that I've always appreciated about rowing as a rower myself and as a coach is that I think more than a lot of other sports and more than many other things in life, it's something where the amount of time and effort that you put into it will pay off, right? It's not something where you're a toddler and you can just dribble a soccer ball better than the other toddlers and you sort of take off from there. It's not a high skill sport. It is a high fitness and a high toughness sport. And so what I learned was that if I just kept doing it with a high level of intention, surrounded by other people who are pushing like that, I would get better. And I hadn't experienced that in other sports. And it was a huge lesson for me to learn for life, that whatever it is that you're undertaking, whether it's a new job or your studies or whatever, if you dedicate yourself to it and put the time in it, you act with intention, you surround yourself with people of high intention and high caliber, you will get better at it, and you can do it no matter how ugly it looks in the beginning, no matter how many times you flip, whatever, you can, if you keep going in it, you'll get better.
And as a coach, how do you think about the responsibility to be a leader and mentor of a new generation of young women?
Yeah, I appreciate that you use the word responsibility, because that's how I feel often. I feel the weight of this position a lot. It's what I love about it, because I feel like on a daily basis, I'm doing something that really matters. And I feel incredibly fortunate to have a profession where I feel like that is the case, that it matters what I do and how I behave any given day, because I have the ability to impact a lot of other lives. The responsibility of carrying on the tradition of the women that came before us that we saw in Jane's story, and women athletes everywhere, is huge. I mean, we are what they dreamed of, right? We have all of the opportunities that they worked so hard to achieve. And with that comes the weight of living up to that work and that effort. And I think another piece of it too, in the coaching world, is just the importance of young women seeing women in leadership positions and coaching specifically, but all kinds of leadership roles. In my time as an athlete, I had probably a dozen or 20 coaches, and you count all the summers and falls and random seasons here and there, and 2 of them were women. And as an assistant coach, I never worked for a woman, female head coach. They're just, for all of the advances that women have made in athletics, in the coaching realm, we're still behind. And ironically, Title IX was great for women athletes. There were far more female coaches before Title IX. So women have actually, on the coaching front, we've got ground to make up. And I really believe that for young women to be able to grow into those roles and see themselves in that role, they need to see others doing it. Others as coaches and athletic directors and in various leadership positions. And so that's a responsibility that I take very seriously too, is showing the women that I coach what this path looks like, and that they can do it as well.
I'm glad you're here. I think that, it's.
Me too.
Seriously. I think what you just said is real, right? The weight of the responsibility. I think it's being a model, but it's also being a trailblazer as well. And then a reminder that, the work that you do is opening doors. And unfortunately, it's a world that we live in which it's not just opening doors, it's having to sort of work hard to keep them open, right? So they don't close behind you.
I'm glad that you said that too, because as soon as you said opening doors, what I was thinking of is, I feel like I've had many doors cracked ajar for me, right? I am not a trend setter. I'm not breaking any glass ceilings. I've had some doors left ajar for me, and that it's my responsibility to open them a little bit more for the women behind me. And that's the importance of being a leader as a coach, but also mentoring other young coaches, other, assistant coaches and other women rowing coaches, but not even here. It's really important to me that I have a network of female coaches that I can turn to for support. And I am building a network of young female coaches that I can help mentor and guide through this process. And that's been really exciting for me to see. So I'm just starting to get to the stage in my coaching career where I've been around long enough to see my undergrad assistants, my volunteer, my grad student coaches now growing into, full-fledged college coaches. And it's really fun to see that. And I think that importance of going through the door, but holding it open behind you is so important.
Jane, my question's for you next. Obviously you've taken this. Well, I'll let you put it in your own words. How has your experience with women's rowing played a role in your career in television and film?
Well, big time. I mean, I think that the younger ladies here said it right in that you're in a boat feeling that challenge of pain constantly and trying to get through it. And you build this fortitude that's just, I mean, I just remember walking down the street thinking I could do anything. I could punch anyone out. I could do whatever. And I think that training and that camaraderie set me right in my career, in that once I started in the film, well, I started in theater first, and I knew how to be a great team player. I knew how to be a great leader. I knew how to listen. And I also knew how to push everyone. I knew how to get them to do more than what they probably thought they could do, because I had been in that situation where I had a coach who just said, you got to give us more. And I think that that's carried me through a wonderful career, in that I'm a real leader out of all of this. I know how to do that. And it was because I had great coaches as leaders, and they taught me how to do it.
And what about that toughness angle as well?
Oh, well, the toughness is good. I think, I mean, I can tell you the toughness is good as a woman in any business, because, you know, Me Too just started, but boy, the lack of Me Too was around for 40 years of my career. So the toughness, I was joking with one of my daughters the other day. I said, you know, for me, the toughness of what I came out of as a varsity athlete was wonderful, because all of that stuff along the way with not being taken seriously, or guys, you know, making passes or doing whatever, I just could drive right through it, because I knew what I had been through as a rower. I knew that I was a successful woman. So I just kept going straight ahead, you know, it just didn't, you know, stop me at all.
And how would you describe the legacy of the women in 9?
I think in our sport in general, we're a sample of a legacy that all of these women from the 70s share, in that the timing was right. We were all sort of, you know, high school kids of the women's movement who had just hit it at the right time, and it was a perfect storm with Title IX happening. And I think that the legacy is that, you know, if there's something in the air, grab it, because the power of all of us together made this happen. If I had been the only one, it never would have happened. It's the same as our boat philosophy. You know, we're all in it together, and we all have to watch out for each other. So I think the legacy is that the camaraderie of the women's spirit is very powerful when it joins together.
And I want to open this next question up to everyone. What are the challenges that are in the present and on the horizon for women's rowing? Like, what are the obstacles? What are the barriers? What are the issues that need to be faced?
I'm happy to start this one. We need to increase our diversity. We need to become a more accessible sport. I think for a very long time, rowing has been a sport that is primarily accessible and accessed by those of pretty high socioeconomic means, and therefore it is predominantly white and of people from areas with high socioeconomic means, and that is a problem, and it's something that across the country there are a lot of programs that are trying to address this in local communities. Row Boston here in Boston is working to address that here. There's similar programs in Row New York and Row LA, but they're limited in scope by necessity. And we as a sport need to figure out what can we do to attract and be welcoming to and a good environment for people of all kinds and from all different backgrounds. And I think what you've heard from a lot of us here is that, and what I'm struck by when you compare the difference between, you know, the women that were rowing in the 70s and the women that are rowing now is, you know, the boathouse is a lot bigger and flashier, the equipment's a lot lighter, but ultimately you're still sitting in a narrow boat going backwards down a river as fast as you can. Well, except for Christina, the coxswains are facing forward, thankfully. But going as hard as you can. It is an incredibly straightforward endeavor, and it shouldn't and doesn't favor any sort of group of people. And so it's the kind of thing that, rowing would benefit from having more people doing it, and more people would benefit from rowing. And I think that's really the next thing that we as a sport need to commit to and continue to commit to, making it more accessible.
What are some more challenges or things to work toward for the future?
More women coaching. I'll jump in for you. I've already said it, but that's really important for all sports.
I think it's also, I think that everyone always has to be aware that we have to watch out for each other. And if there's a threat of Title IX being challenged, if we hear that another college is losing its program due to financing, I think that as a community, we've always stuck together. And I think that that is something that everyone always has to know when they come into these programs. And it's not just sports. I mean, it's theater. It's, we all are in these families that all of us together are so powerful. So I think that it's a check that if you know that something has happened or someone has lost a boat or something, you always keep up with your community.
I want to offer a question to Megan and Christina. And Christina, I'll take the first swing at this one this time. How do you think about your responsibility in terms of the influence you will have on those who follow?
I think it is definitely a huge responsibility. This sport has done such incredible things in lifting me up in my own kind of confidence and self-worth and ability. And I see all of the women that came before us and the women who are my coaches, my teammates, and helping me, holding that hand out and pulling me up. So I hope that in even talking to the freshmen this year and in the past, helping to, recruit walk-on coxswains at our activities fair, I hope that people can look to me for advice, and also that I can be that hand, like pulling someone else up in achieving their potential in the sport, but also in accessing the qualities that are going to really change their lives. So.
Yeah, Christina said that well. I think, as we've heard from everyone else on this call today, that rowing can really give you so much. It can teach you so many things about yourself and help you become the more authentic you, but also, like Jane said, all the skills it taught her as she entered her job and her career, about being tough, about being a leader, about being a good teammate, and being able to compromise, but also push people. And I think about that a lot, about what I'm going to leave behind when I graduate, because I'm only here for 4 years. It's a short time in the history of the program. And so really being able to try to leave a mark that this is the kind of women we want to bring together and support each other, so that we can all become good leaders, good teammates, good compromisers, but good pushers, and just, leave a mark that everyone who comes through this program will be that kind of person.
And just one last question I want to offer to everyone here. When I was in high school, I played rugby in college, but rowing was a very popular sport in my high school. And one of our teachers would actually invert the Ben-Hur phrase. It wasn't the Ben-Hur phrase is row well and live. It was live well and row, right? So the question I have for you when you're talking with someone, just kind of out in the world, and you share your passion and your story and your experience, with rowing, what do you say? Like, what does rowing mean to you? Jane, do you want to lead us off?
I actually talk about it a lot in the open world. And I think that the reason I talk about it a lot is because I want others to listen about what it was all about, and how, and these aren't just with the ladies that are in the film, this is just in general, that I just sort of bring it up that, everyone's got to be together to do this. And I feel the presence of it in me every day and just in my life. So I think that it's a powerful thing. And I know other sports you feel the same way, and football players have always talked about it, but we got a chance to talk about it. And maybe that was one of the things that when we first started back in the 70s, we was a byproduct of that. But by the time we left school, we were like, boy, this is going to carry us into the rest of our lives. And it has.
Megan?
For me, I don't feel like I've been part of it long enough, but even I guess in the time I have been part of it, rowing, it means a lot. I gotta come up with better words. It's really helped me define who I am, but also hone in and train, not just like physically train, but like train the traits of my personality that I wanted to master, to become the person I want to be. And so rowing means a lot to me for that, because it's taught me or forced me to practice those practice skills. I guess I'm sound kind of vague with this. But yeah, I really love the challenge it presents in allowing you to practice hard things. And as Maddie said earlier, it really, really rewards rowing more than most sports, just time put in. And so I think showing up every day and just working a little harder, I don't know, that makes it very valuable to me.
Thank you. Christina?
Sure. I think it's something that's kind of difficult to impress upon people, just how much it means to me personally, and then also everyone in the sport as an individual. I think, as a senior who's graduating in a couple of months, I'm thinking of my time on the team as really like an emotional coming of age for myself and for my college experience. And I think just trying to impress upon other people that things being challenging and having to work hard and have a lot of things against you, and that I was learning a new sport, around people who had done it for a long time. I was, pushing to compete against those people who also had been here. I think it's that any kind of like uphill battle is going to reward in the end, and that camaraderie that comes with it is absolutely going to affect the rest of my life. So it's just cheesy things I think that I say to other people that they're like, yeah, okay, but I don't know that you can truly understand, I guess.
Madeline?
Yeah, I think we often hear the phrase building character, right? Rowing builds character, different things build character. And I think rowing reveals character. And because I think the strength, the ability to withstand suffering and learn new skills and be a leader and be a part of a group, be a good follower, right? The women that are on this team and that are successful in this, and anybody that is, rowing and successful at doing something hard, that character is within. It's there all along, but it has to be revealed. You have to work hard at trusting yourself that it's there, knowing that you can rely upon it, and being able to, sort of chisel away to reveal that strength that was in there all along, but you'll never know you have it until you need to use it. And you'll never know that that was there until you really do it and grind away at it. And, Glennon Doyle says we can do hard things, right? Well, you've got to do the hard thing to know that you can do it. And that's what rowing gave me personally. And that's why I love coaching and keep coaching, is that process of revealing strength and resiliency that's in my athletes all along, but we've got to do some work to see it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, just to wind down, I want to thank everyone, all of our panelists, for being here. Jane, thank you especially for producing and directing 9 and preserving and sharing the story. And like, as a person who just witnessed and recently re-witnessed, watched again and again 9, I find not only the history impactful and powerful, a reminder that it's people who open doors, it's people who hopefully will like knock that door off its hinge so it cannot be closed for those who follow. It's people who have to sort of stand up and sort of make demands to say that there should be a program, that there needs to be equal facilities, there needs to be equal access. I think that's important and that's affirming. I think it's a reminder that, within all of us, right, there's champions for the future, right? So, when you're rowing and that group of 9 sort of appear on the screen, it's the power, the majesty, the strength, the toughness of the work is inspiring and impactful. And then, of course, I'm just honored to be a part of a conversation with women who are today, sort of doing that work, blazing that path, creating opportunities, influencing the future of the sport of rowing for those who will follow. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day, okay?
Thank you all.
Thank you.